because life's too busy, we've got more important things to worry about than a bar of soap or a chocolate bar or a can of beer. We have to use brands to navigate choice. And so the more we understand who it is and the more we recognize it, the less friction it puts in our minds. And so when we put friction in the mind, it's got to be for a good reason. You've either got to get someone to think something different, stopping them in their tracks, or nudge them to the left or nudge them to the right. And if there's not a payoff for them, that's good, I like that, or that's what I want, then they're going to go, what's that? I don't get that. I don't like it, because it's causing them some mental disturbance because they're having to navigate life. It's a bit like if Google Maps suddenly put a no entry sign on your road and it wasn't, you're like, what? I can't get down my own road. I don't like that. And that's what happens when brands don't kind of, evoke the brand in the mind, I suppose.
Have you ever seen a brand change its image and thought, wow, that's bold? Or what were they thinking? Today, we're unravelling the mysteries of successful brand transformation sparked by WHSmith's recent controversial shift to WHS. It was only a trial change, but one that certainly stirred debate. So what can we learn from it? To guide us through this maze, we're joined by Lee Rolston, Chief Growth Officer at Jones Knowles Ritchie. Lee is a maestro in brand building, having steered JKR to craft iconic revamps for Burger King, Dunkin' and Budweiser. His agency's work doesn't just catch the eye, it wins hearts and awards. But what makes a brand tick? Beyond public opinion, how do you measure true success? In a world brimming with ideas, can originality still make a mark? And how do you honour a brand's heritage while keeping it fresh and relevant? Lee is here not just to answer these burning questions, but also to share his vision for the future of design. Whether you're a seasoned designer, a brand enthusiast, or just curious, this episode offers a unique glimpse into the evolving world of branding today. So we're talking today about when rebrands go terribly wrong and perhaps when they go really well. So thanks for joining us, Lee. I'm dead excited to delve into this, very topical subject.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to see you, Katie.
Yeah. And I mean, we're sort of, I guess the most recent thing has to be the WHSmith trial refresh. It's a great example. It wasn't great, was it?
I suppose, I think it's got a significant amount of coverage, and not all of it rosy, and a lot of it somewhat unfair. But yeah, I think it just highlights some of the things you need to consider when you embark on a project of that nature, and making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, you've thought it through, and then you've thought about the steps you need to take to make it as successful as possible, even if it is a trial. Yeah, definitely.
I'm probably being a bit harsh because we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, what kind of fires are being put out. And we're all human. Mistakes are made, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I know I'm a firm believer that the creative process is about creativity. It's about people, and it's about ultimately their thoughts, their views, their thinking, their expressions and their feelings as well. So you've got to always be mindful that behind one of these jobs is a group of people with great intentions. I guess, and when they go well, the rewards and the accolades come with it. I just think in the case of, and we as outsiders, we do not know what they were trying to achieve. But equally as outsiders, it's difficult to decode what they were actually trying to achieve with the execution that they put into the public domain. And by all accounts, it sounds like, that trial is being kind of
scaled back.
Yeah,
pulled back. They've probably learned lessons from it, and they're kind of back to the drawing board.
I also think as well that, we'll all have subjective views on whether we think it's right, it's wrong, we like it, we don't like it, it looks good, looks bad. I think when you're trying to reframe a brand, it's always helpful to get the rationale of why you're doing it into the public domain as well, because then people can talk about the strategic drive behind it rather than get that subjectivity of, I don't like that slab serif, or why did they go that colour, and why do they call it that? Because that's not really the point. And I think, we didn't know what they were trying to achieve. It might have helped if we had at least some point of view
context
from the business. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between, the design community having their opinion and the general public. And if the general public go, hang on, that is just weird, that looks like the NHS logo, that's when you've really messed up.
Yeah, and it's weird because the court of public opinion, whatever side of that fence you sit on, it doesn't really matter whether you believe it or not. It's a reality that the public hold, and there's some instances. I think probably the most famous one would be the 2012 logo, where if you remember, cast your mind back, that was ridiculed. It was insulted. People were like, "What is this thing?" And it was only in the context of when it actually landed. And it was then a symbol of arguably the proudest moment this country's had for decades. That the meaning behind it was put into that symbol. And we've got to remember that, I think there's a brilliant I always say the Michael Eisner quote from Disney is what is a brand? It's probably the best one. It's the product of 1,000 gestures. It's built over time. It's what you do. And I think with something like the 2012 logo, that's a great example of when we did something to be proud of, when we showed the world we could put on a show that would rival anybody. Our athletes even won things. You know what I mean? That was great. And then all of a sudden that symbol made sense in the context of what the Olympics did. So I think sometimes you've got to give brands the opportunity to wear into the public consciousness. But I wouldn't put the WHSmith's example in the same bracket as 2012.
No, because they have a strong brand already. So I wonder what the thinking was there. Because it reminds me of getting those lovely magazines of our youth and going in and getting stationery, always getting that kind of mathematical little metal pencil case. Do you remember? I do. And, I still take my kids in there now and I'm trying to recreate that feeling I have of go and pick your stationery and make sure you get your pencil case for the start of term. I guess it's full of so much emotional equity and branded equity, but, if you think about the WHSmith, the Woolworths, the Wilcos of this world, they've got to reframe that for a future generation. And maybe that was the intention with this store trial, was that they were trying a new format or trying a new approach. And when you do that, it's important to symbolize that with something meaningful. So, people like Amazon, if they're going to have a, contactless shop, it's Amazon Go. So, it's from Amazon and they want me to literally come in and go, or it's a fresh concept. There was no symbols or, guides or pointers to the public about what WHSmiths were trying to do. It was quite a brutal WHS, and I think that was possibly one of the challenges, is we didn't know what to expect from this new concept. I suppose, secondly, to your point, WHSmith has a bundle of equities and feelings and emotions and experiences it could have tapped into. It's a beautiful egg-shaped kind of ornate WHS. There's that beautiful geometrical cubic WHS that we all remember that was tessellated on our little paper bags, depending on how old you are. I'm giving my age away on that one, that it was paper, not plastic. And it's all those things they could have lent into to symbolise it, but they didn't for whatever reason. So unfortunately they've got a bit of a kicking for it, which is sad for those involved. But it's just one of those. You put yourself out there when you rebrand a brand to public public judgment. I don't envy your job, and it's kind of it's bad for their reputation, because for me, my first thought was, oh, it's in trouble. It's run out of budget. Oh, is it going to go into administration? I mean, brand is so important, particularly on the high street that's dying, and competition is so fierce.
Yeah, you look at people like Co-op, who've done a great job of harnessing the spirit of the cooperative and also the legacy of some of the symbols they've used, and reverting to a more iconic, I guess, more kind of possibly even more memorable version of themselves, but without being retro. We've managed to capture that kind of magic with things like Burger King. where
Yeah.
you try and, with that example from JKR, we were always trying to symbolize something. So, the business, and again, it is a it's QSR brand, but it is a high street brand. The business had made the decision to, make sure that there were no additives, no preservatives, no artificial flavorings in their product. And they needed a symbolic shift towards that. And, when we took a step back and we were like, what is the symbol of that? It's craveability. And then you go back to the old, the kind of classic, the burger patty and the brand in the center.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, well, that is a craveable icon. And then you build a system around it where all the typefaces and the photography, even down to, you want to make the uniforms craveable. So you want them that good that people might want to nick them or put them on StockX. Yeah. And you want to be craveable to people to work there. So I always think that, for it to be successful, you've got to go back to what makes that brand itself above and beyond everyone else. And what's the best version of that for today and for tomorrow. And that's when I think, rebrands are successful. They are in service of a business shift. They're true to themselves. They're truly distinctive to what that brand is about. And then they're expressed not just visually, but across all behaviors, all touch points of the brand in the most distinctive way possible. And that, that's possibly maybe where WHSmith could have learned. They could have gone back to what's true about themselves and evoke some of the emotions you talked about at the start of this.
Yeah.
To make us feel like, I want to go back in.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really strong thing they could have leaned into. And with Burger King, that was that was hugely well received. With designers too.
Yeah, it pulled off that trick of kind of, it transcended just the design and the marketing kind of coverage. It went into like mainstream American kind of platforms and shows and into the mainstream. For the day of release, it actually bumped the share price of the parent company by about 5.5%, which very rarely happens. It was one of those moments where we always say when rebrands at their best, you really capture the brand that's in the mind. It's what you believe the brand to already be and what you want it to be. And I think that was a great example. Possibly Budweiser was another one of ours, where Dunkin' Donuts, where you get that sweet spot and you go, that's that brand. Yeah, that's them. That is them at their best.
That must be a really exciting part of the process, actually. I presume you do focus groups and really go into the sort of brand, visit stores.
Yeah. I think, we tend to go very deep. We start, we'll obviously look at the context that the brand's in, culture, consumers, the company itself, what is going on in the category. And we try and sort of, understand the context, but then we go, right, okay, what is it about you? What is it that is the essence of what that brand's about? We call it a behavioral brand idea. And it's really like, what is the thing that over time this brand has been and does? And how can it guide everything the brand does? That talked about craveability. It's the home of the flame-grilled Whopper. So there's something about taste and desire and, I just want it. And that was really what we lent into. Then you start looking at, some of the history of how it showed up in the past and trying to say, okay, is there something we can be inspired by? Or, is it already doing a great job? And do we just need to tweak it for the context it lives in today? And sometimes it's not about changing anything really. It's just about setting a bit more of a wider frame of tools and kit and systems to make it move or sound or smell or kind of how do you take it into physical environments or digital environments. So it's a fascinating. It's more and more complex as time goes on, as media gets more kind of fragmented. But it makes it even more exciting.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I love that brands are doing better in general with the way they work and operate and how they are wanting that reflected in their branding. So that's super positive.
Yeah, it feels like we're living in a golden age of kind of visual literacy. We're all, we all look at operating systems on phones, and we're not told what those symbols are, but we know them. So we have been trained to be like, right, intuitively, like, I get it through my eyes, and that's great. What's, I guess, the counter to that, and we launched a big study with Ipsos this year called Be Distinctive Everywhere, where we looked at over 500 brands, 26,000 consumers, and over 5,000 brand assets.
Wow!
So you would think in this visually literal world that we are, much better at the art of branding. The sad fact was only 15% of all those assets, so logos, slogans, mascots, colours, even the products themselves, only 15% of those assets are truly distinctive.
Wow.
So whilst we are getting better at the art of graphically representing things, we've still got a long way to go to be absolute masters at branding and standing out and being truly distinctive in a very complex, very kind of sea of sameness world. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, that. Was
blue the most used colour?
Blues, reds tend to be kind of those staples. But again, it's what was interesting about that report was colour is very hard to own. And if you ask in the abstract, no one owns red.
No.
But put it on a funny shaped chip packet and put an M on it, put it on a camera, put a K on it, a yellow K, or put it above a petrol station with a yellow shell on it. It can only be one brand. So colour's always about context in our world. It's like, okay, how can you bring other elements like shape or symbols or other balances of colour to make it truly ownable? Yeah, movement.
All these new things, well, they're not necessarily new anymore, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's fascinating. I get the occasional email or direct message saying, "Oh, Katie, I just wanted to let you know there's another brand out there using eyes as their symbol for their brand." I was like, well, unfortunately, we don't own eyes, and it's very sweet of people. But I think in terms of distinctiveness and originality, is it possible to be original anymore?
I think it's possible to. The idea of fresh consistency. When you're looking at brands, the most important thing is start with what is true to that brand. What are the assets and the behaviours that are unmistakably, Budweiser or Guinness or
Stella Artois.
Whoever you work, Stella Artois, for example. How do you really understand that brand and then understand and show respect to the assets that you've got, because it's really hard to displace images in the mind of a consumer. I could sketch a black sort of like funny shaped object with a white top on it, in the shape of a pint glass, and 99% of the world would know that as a Guinness.
Yes.
Now you'd be foolish to mess with that in its iconography, in its form. We've had recent examples of, I'm sure for really good corporate reasons, things like the Johnson & Johnson word mark has become smoothed and legible and probably evokes a future of modern healthcare. But you have lost what was once that, famous script. And there's a trade-off. If you want to go down that route, you have to accept you're giving up on something that has taken generations and decades to cement in the mind. And brands have all those, facets, slogans. I could probably say work, rest and play to a generation of people. And that phrase may not have been used by Mars Bar for decades, but they know it. So it takes a lot to displace things in people's minds. And sometimes as marketeers and as practitioners, we don't really appreciate that as much as we maybe should.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think also people don't like change. They just don't, and so that's the kind of how do you kind of update a brand that's so well loved for the modern times without kind of saying, getting especially the public saying, "Oh, I don't like it, I don't recognise that." Yeah,
and this, without getting too deep and kind of into the neurological kind of science of it. There's a good reason why they get upset about it, because life's too busy. We've got more important things to worry about than a bar of soap or a chocolate bar or a can of beer. we have to use brands to navigate choice. And so the more we understand who it is and the more we recognize it, the less friction it puts in our minds. And so when we put friction in the mind, it's got to be for a good reason. You've either got to get someone to think something different, stop them in their tracks, or nudge them to the left or nudge them to the right. And if there's not a payoff for them, that's good, I like that, or that's what I want, then they're going to go, what's that? I don't get that. I don't like it, because it's causing them some mental disturbance because they're having to navigate life. It's a bit like if Google Maps suddenly put a no entry sign on your road and it wasn't, you're like, what? I can't get down my own road. I don't like that. And that's what happens when brands don't kind of, evoke the brand in the mind, I suppose.
Familiarity. We've got so many choices these days that we're oversaturated with information, constantly bombarded. So yes, just to have that kind of softness on the mind and say, oh yes, I know that, I recognize that, I trust that, because there's so much choice. And I guess in your business, in your line of work, when you're sort of working with a brand that's trying to sort of knock a competitor off the top spot, part of the research involves asking people why they stick with that brand and refuse to try anything new. I suppose that's where that kind of psychology comes in.
Yeah, I suppose, when you get your hands on things like brand tracking, where you can look over time and go, okay, what is distinct about your brand, but also what's relatively different. It's very hard to be unique in any way, shape, or form as a brand, but it is possible to be relatively different to some of your competition. So you've got to honor those attributes or image metrics and go, okay, if this brand is distinct for this, but stands for these things, how do you build and honor those things? How do you push them into kind of today's culture? How do you make sure that, that we bring fresh meaning to those things as opposed to a clashing thought that knocks people off their stride? Because you're not gonna change perceptions of that have been held for a very long time. I used to when I was a client run the Cadbury brand. That brand is you are a curator of a piece of global history.
Yeah,
you have to be. You can't knock that brand off its stride. You have to keep building and growing and making it, even more strong and powerful going forward. And
they've just celebrated their 200th year anniversary, and are tapping into their history. Actually,
I saw that.
It's lovely.
Yeah, I saw a lovely piece. Did you see the graphic 200 that they placed in the middle of the signature? It was a really nice, simple, beautiful graphic thought. Loved it.
Yeah, the best chocolate. I prefer it to Galaxy, and for all of those reasons.
No comment.
Other chocolates are available.
Absolutely.
What would you say was the worst rebrand ever, or am I not allowed to get you to say that?
I mean, I think there's a lot of documented failures. It's probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I think the one that is referenced more than any is the Tropicana. One where they had a very distinctive symbol of that brand, which was the full orange with the straw in it.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not seen the image of video, I'm actually making that physical kind of shape with my hands. And then for reasons beyond, I think, why they shifted that to a rather generic glass, but the type on the side of the bar. But and then their sales drastically and rapidly declined.
Yeah.
So much so they flipped back to it. And I guess that was possibly, the kind of poster child of some of the things you need to kind of consider and avoid when making those choices.
People didn't recognize it.
No, and I think that, that kind of lessons from that are, that point I made earlier about honouring your distinctive assets. Nobody else had a symbol that denoted, literally straight from the heart of the fruit, fresh as it comes from the fruit, with the straw. And they should have probably, really kind of lent into that and then brought that to life in a more distinctive and standout way. But that was an example, I guess, that definitely didn't work. Yeah. What are
the kind of, just out of curiosity, what are the kind of brands that you really remember from your youth, from your childhood, from the tuck shop at the school to the local corner store?
it's interesting because you go back to, I always think the impulse brands, so like confectionery and soft drinks
Crisps.
and snacks, crisps, they're really good because, if you think of who we work with Mars Confectionery, you think, and have done for a very long time, you think of the general kind of evolution of brands like that. They stay very close to what they are because they know that their business is habitual and often small purchases over time. And I always think that those brands, those impulsive brands, people like Coca-Cola, they really understand the right balance of evolution and staying faithful to the distinctive assets they've got. And they understand, what the brand's about. If you think about the longer term, from I like to buy the world of Coke to Real Magic, it's quite similar thought that governs that brand. It's just refreshed for time. That idea that, that kind of, that something exciting is within arm's reach and you want to share that with those close to you. And, that's been there for decades and decades. And I just think those kind of brands are successful over generations for a very, very good reason, because they know who they are. They stay true to who they are. They have an idea which governs everything the brand does, and they cherish, their iconic assets.
Is one of the biggest challenges for an agency such as yourselves, if a big name that's very well known comes to you and says, we've got to change our name? So like Snickers, Marathon, Opal Fruits, Starburst.
Yeah, I mean, we had it in recent years with Dunkin' Donuts. So, their challenge was they needed to reframe themselves out of just being a donut shop, because they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, coffee seller in the US. So they are if you close your eyes and think of a donut, it's probably a Dunkin'.
Yes.
And the symbolism and the iconography. So how do you keep that but don't be shackled by it? And that's quite a challenge and a lot of fear. Whenever you change a brand like that, you're fearful of the backlash. You're fearful of the reaction from the public, especially when that is an icon of America.
Yes.
America. So how do you not be known as a donut shop but keep the integrity of the brand? And our answer was just drop the donut.
Yeah. And
the reason we said that, is that people, America runs on Dunkin' was in the vernacular. I'm going to Dunkin'. You had the permission of the audience, and our thought was, okay, well, honor, your brand legacy, your graphic legacy, but just do it in a more bold and vibrant way and be more single-minded. So, you managed to pull that trick off where, people celebrate what you now are, but they don't necessarily miss what changed. And that's quite a delicate balance, so, and sometimes name changes are forced on you for legal or kind of.
Well, it's a dodgy name in another language.
Yeah. So you got to think of those things. So yeah, any shift of what a brand is called, you've got to tread very, very carefully. And again, it's about understanding what the audience will let you do, and not, it would have been strange to have called it Dunkin' something else, or even thought about dropping Dunkin'. So, but you had to make sure that you were like, right, okay, let's be true to what the audience will let us do, and then make sure that we can do it, and then reimagine that brand. Not revolutionary. It was very evolutionary in its expression, but allow it to do things in a much more pop culture way, stand out more, be more vibrant, be more kind of on the front foot into American culture. And that was kind of a good example of when it goes well.
It seems like such a simple concept in hindsight, but I assume it wasn't.
No, I think with all those things, you've got to have a support of a great, nearly all the good examples have got a brilliant client alongside the agency, great brief. There's three things we always kind of call out as our values that we see in clients: bravery, tenacity, and be yourself. Those, if you've got them, generally things go well. And that's not to say you have bumps in the road and you have to kind of go back to go forward. But I think if you're all wanting to try and get the right thing by the business, and to make, the right impression, you can get there in most instances.
Yeah, it's a partnership. It's not going to work any other way.
100%, 100%.
Have you ever got it wrong? Because I know that design Twitter might sort of say yes.
I mean, I think the subjectivity of like aesthetic, and people will comment on some of our work and have points of view on it. I'm struggling to think of an example where we've had to, from a commercial impact perspective, it's not done what it's meant to do. Obviously, when you work on brands over a 25-year period, context change, and you have to shift, shift the emphasis of the branding. So, Budweiser is a great example where, we kind of went in and literally redrew every aspect of the brand, put the craft back in, and then you realize that that's working great. But then, the brand wants to take a gear shift into, cultural involvement and being part of things like music, fashion, sport, and it needs to play a different role. So you have to sort of think about, okay, well, what's the idea behind the brand, and does that mean that certain aspects of the brand come to the fore in a more bold and iconic way? So sometimes you've got to be humble enough to accept that what was right for 5, 6, 7, 8 years needs to be relooked at, even if it was from yourselves. And you need to sort of shift emphasis, and just done that again with Stella Artois, where we really needed to make sure that brand could participate in and almost feel like it was part of a more kind of progressive culture, and that requires some of the aspects of the brand and the identity to be looked at again. So it's a delicate balance, and if you do feel you need to correct things in market, the good thing is now it's a much more dynamic world. Not everything requires a printing press. Yeah. So if you do need to change things because it doesn't work in certain channels, you can get at it on an ongoing basis. So
it's a blessing and a curse. It's your new challenge, isn't it? Just keeping up with it all and how it's changing so fast now.
Yeah. But again, with some of the progressive tools you've got in your armory, like generative AI, you can use it to your benefit, not just to kind of to be fearful of it. So yeah, it is, things change, but equally the kit of parts and the tools that you've got are ever increasing as well. So kind of balance itself out.
So what's the real measure of a successful rebrand beyond public opinion, beyond design Twitter?
It comes back to what the objectives of it. If the objectives were to grow an audience, to drive greater profit through higher pricing, or to shift into a new category through different meaning of the brand, the most important thing is that you know what you're trying to shift at the start. Yeah. So, we're quite dogmatic about, okay, well, great brief. What are you trying to change? What's the business change that this is going to have to be measured against? And then I think you can then, that's
work
when, when you see, and you see that, okay. So, we are, recruiting a new audience or a different audience to a brand, or, it's really interesting, they've been able to command a premium because of the rebrand. That's when it's exciting, and that's when I can subjectively tell you if it's success or failure, but that's when we can objectively go, actually this has worked, and that's why it was the right thing to do. Because that's more and more now, people don't, more and more people are rebranding because there is a genuine business need to do that, not because vanity says I'd like my brand to be nice or more I don't know, more premium or X, Y, Z. There's got to be a business reason behind it, and then we can measure the success of it.
Fab. The Stella Artois refresh was very subtle, I thought, and there were a few comments on X, Twitter, whatever it's called. There's another example of a rebrand. That some felt it didn't deviate too much from what was already there before, that it wasn't exciting enough.
I take that as a compliment. I mean, that's kind of what we if it deviated too far from what was before, we may have overstepped the mark. I think it's important is, and in that instance, it's about the environments that brand's going to show up in, and an acknowledgement that some of the way the brand was operating just couldn't flex enough to get into things like fashion collaborations or partnerships with sporting platforms or certain occasions, like consumption occasions. So you've got to change it enough to make it work and make it desirable and make it attractive to the people you want to get it adopted by. And we've seen early signs of those metrics moving in the positive direction. So a lot of our work doesn't seek to jar or be exciting for the sake of being different. It's about being true to the brand and making sure that we deliver on what our clients have asked of us. And we all firmly believe we work for the brand. So the brand is king. The brand, you've got to make sure you're true to that brand first and foremost, and that
not the opinion of other graphic designers.
Well, it's nice when it comes. No, I'm not a graphic designer. I don't have any skills whatsoever in the world of graphic design, I'm afraid. So, but equally, it is nice when it comes, but it's not that's not the main reason.
No, you're a chief growth officer. I mean, goodness, what's that for anybody who doesn't know what that is, including me?
I guess it's thinking of what we do as a business in the context of what's going to grow our clients' business. So it's more about understanding the agendas of our clients, both current and future, and how what we do, very well can serve that growth. So it's about understanding and being able to build kind of what JKR does so that our clients grow first and foremost, be it through, new capabilities, different kind of propositions within our frame of kind of capability, make sure our reputation out in the world is what it should be in service of the type of work we do. That's that's what my boss put on my job description.
You must love it.
No, I really enjoy. I enjoy. My background before being in agencies was a marketeer, client side. So I loved that. I was fortunate enough to work on some amazing brands, Stella Artois, Cadbury, Muller, Heinz. So I
just a few small names,
No. Yeah, no, but sorry, I didn't. If I did name drop, I really didn't mean to. I apologise to anyone listening.
I'm teasing.
But the point is that brands are in my blood. I can't do anything else other than and being able to help our clients reimagine the brands, the branding, the identity, the experiences to be the best version of themselves. I love this industry, and just want to. Everyone brands just need to get better and better. That's really kind of my view in this like.
It must be fascinating, Lee. It must be absolutely fascinating because you have to keep your finger on the pulse, spot opportunities that are coming up all of the time, really kind of be right at the forefront of what's happening and changing.
Well, thankfully, I've got other people who can keep the finger on the pulse because, I'm not sure what kind of pulse I'd be keeping my finger on. But no, I think it's just about, again, it goes back to the basics. It's like, what's the brand about? And that'll change as life and culture and channels and kind of formats and kind of brand assets change. But really, it stays the same. What's the brand about? What's the business trying to achieve through the brand? And what's in the brand's armory that in today's and tomorrow's culture is going to resonate? Mm. Once you can answer those three, you've got a pretty good start on how the brand's going to show up in the world.
It doesn't have to be complicated, does it? It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to sort of add in all these kind of wizardry techniques. It's just simply that. What is the goal and where are we heading and how do we get there?
Yeah. And again, as the world gets more complex and brands become more complex and channels become more complex, the simpler you can make what it is and what you're trying to do, probably the more chance of success you've got in that more complicated and complex world. So, we try and kind of keep it as true and as simple to what we're trying to achieve, because the complexity comes in delivering it. It's hard enough to make it happen. So let's keep it simple at the start. It's probably a kind of pretty good mantra.
Yeah, definitely. So what are your predictions for branding in the future?
Good question. I think to the point around, only 15% of brand assets are truly distinctive. I think we're in a position where graphic design, specifically graphic design, is everywhere. It's all around us. If you think about, we're in Shoreditch as an office. I can step out of the door and I am bombarded by graffiti, graphics, kind of branding. It's probably more prevalent to our world than ever before. But again, to the 15% of assets, you've got to make sure that we direct great. And I think the standard of graphic design has probably never been better. I think it's brilliant. It's everywhere. The tools have been democratized. How do you make sure that is in service of standing out, not adding to the noise? And that, I think, is a big thing. I think as an industry, we need to stay true to it. May be graphically great, but who is it? What is it? Is it carrying a thought? That, I think, is always going to be important. Obviously, some of the newer tools that are coming in, could be in danger of making things all the same. Algorithmic kind of the algorithmic world has brought a lot of things similar so far. I'd like to think that with AI, we learn from some of the mistakes of, the genericisms of blanding.
Do you mean when you say algorithmic, do you mean sort of search engine?
Yeah, just if you think about, things like Instagram has brought a lot of similarity in visual styles.
I see. Yeah.
The norms of what it takes to be a digital ad mean you get served up a lot of things that look quite like each other. How a website should work means that most of them look very similar. I think, as we enter into this AI journey, we need to make sure that isn't another force to make everything look the same. And how do you use that technology to avoid that?
Yeah, how do you use it? Maybe the AI can help encourage originality.
Yeah,
because it can sort of go through swathes of content and say, well, actually, that's been done here, there, here. I know tools are available now already to do that, but I think that probably will become more prevalent.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, and it could free up, people to think in a more distinctive way at the start of projects rather than try and look for, I guess, just aesthetic kind of difference at the end of a project. So yeah, I guess that's going to have a bearing on it. And as always, the broader context of which we live in, what's happening out in the wider world, will dictate what brands do and don't do, and can and can't afford to do. So so as always, we're kind of let's strap ourselves in and see what 2024 brings us in a broader sense.
It's terrifying and exciting at the same time. And there's so much talk about personalization. We're going to have brands in future that are specifically made for us. I mean, I don't know how that would work. That just kind of makes my brain scramble and I can't actually visualize what it would be. But I assume you'd be walking down the street 50 years from now wearing some sort of, new technology, some smartwear, and all the ads are tailored specifically to you. I'm pretty sure Black Mirror has already kind of visualized that. Yeah,
I suppose we're kind of already entering into that with things like addressable content and, the kind of thing, even things on the, the Netflix kind of home screen is already personalized to what we watch. And so it's kind of there. I guess it's just a question of, how far is the right level to go before we feel like we're being intrusive. I think a lot of the privacy settings on tech providers is really, acknowledging that we've probably gone too far on kind of intrusive.
Like eye tracking.
So I think all that intrusive stuff.
Dark arts.
So I think we're becoming a bit more savvy to that, and I think maybe it'll bring us back to a more responsible and respectful approach to marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I found this chat absolutely fascinating, Lee. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a really, really interesting chat. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, thank you. And do keep us updated with everything that's happening at the agency.
Will do. And have a great 2024.
Thank you very much. You too. Thanks to Lee Rolston from Jones Knowles Ritchie for joining us this week. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do subscribe via creativeboom.com/podcast. That's where you can also find more information about today's guest and also dive into our archive. Oh, and if you have time, a review always helps. Thank you. That's it for season 6. We hope you've enjoyed it. We're taking a short break now, but we'll be back soon with more candid conversations with creatives to uncover the secrets to success and all the practical advice, funny stories, and honest wisdom that will help you build a booming creative career. See you soon.